How's it going, everybody? It's Schuyler Callihan here with another episode of Between Eers. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI, or if you're watching on our site, make sure you go over to that YouTube page and give us a subscribe and a like on this video as well. Tonight, West Virginia takes on the Arizona Wildcats. It's round two, except for this time, it actually counts towards the Big 12 record. So this is a massive game for the Mountaineers. They've got a couple of days after this to kind of regroup and rest. Hopefully, potentially, maybe get some guys healthy, and then they make the trip out west to go take on the Colorado Buffs, which is a game. No road game in Big 12 play is easy, but this is probably one of the easier ones they're going to have all year. So you win this one tonight, things are looking pretty good because you go to Colorado, and then you have a really tough couple of games coming up against Houston and Iowa State. So this one tonight and Sunday against Colorado, I wouldn't want to characterize them as must wins. I think that's a little bit too far. But when you look at the road ahead, you've got some challenging games coming up, and you don't know if Tucker DeVries is going to be there, if Amani Hansberry uh, has some sort of a step back, or maybe he's still trying to get his footing after his injury. You don't know if Jaden Stone will be back by then. So you're going to need every win you can get before these two games coming up against Houston and Iowa State, two teams that are ranked inside the top 15. Iowa State currently ranked third. So, what is the ceiling for this team? We're about at the halfway point. So I felt like now would be a good time, especially before, uh, this game tonight would be a good time to talk about this. We're not quite to the halfway point, but we're almost there. A couple of games in the Big 12 play, 18 left. In a normal year, this is about how many games you would have left in the Big 12 schedule. You'd only have 18. Now they bumped it up to 20. I believe this is only going to be a 1 year thing, I would imagine. It's just too much in this league. There's too many talented teams. They don't want to beat up on each other, and it would just make sense to them for them to go back to 18. So you're probably only playing. It would be two teams twice. So outside of that, you'd play everybody else once. But what is the ceiling for this team? Well, I mean, let's start with the obvious: health. If Tucker DeVries is healthy, I mean, this group can go pretty far. I'd say they are a Big 12 contender. I'd say they are a team that could get past the second weekend in the NCAA tournament and maybe a dark horse to make it to a Final Four. Now, are they a national championship caliber team? It's hard for me to go that far because you don't have the depth. You don't have a third consistent scorer. Hopefully, potentially Jonathan Powell could be that guy, but as a true freshman, that's a tall ask. But I would say, I mean, anything is possible. When you get into March, if you make shots, you play good defense like they have, anything is possible. Any team can get hot, and that confidence can just ride game after game after game. So anything can happen. I don't want to put a hard ceiling on this, but if Tucker DeVries is healthy, I'd say the I would say an Elite Eight is definitely attainable. Is a Final Four or getting to the national title game attainable? Yes, it's possible, but that would be one heck of a run. You would have to have almost everything going your way. You would need to make shots on a consistent basis. You'd have to play extremely good defense, which I have confidence and faith in that they can do. You'd have to stay healthy, and you'd have to have good matchups. You'd have to have a nice path because you only have 6 to 7, maybe 8 guys that you can kind of count on. You really only have a handful of guys that can really score it. So when you go up against some of these teams that are going to have 3 or 4 guys that can really score it, you could be in a little bit of trouble. That's where you depend on the defense to bail you out in some of those games, and hopefully you can muddy up 1 or 2 of those to get you out of that round. But if for whatever reason Tucker doesn't come back or doesn't come back as the same player and just kind of has this, it's a lingering, nagging thing. I still think they're a second round, or excuse me, a second weekend team. I still think they can get to a Sweet 16. Why? Well, because they've won without him. They've found ways to beat Kansas on the road. They found a way to destroy Oklahoma State. They won all three of the cupcake games while he was out, which no one's making a big deal about, and rightfully so. But I do believe this team can still compete in the Big 12. They can still win games without Tucker. The question I have is, when does it take a toll? Because at some point, some of these guys are going to get found out. Jonathan Powell at some point is not going to be left off the depth or left off the scouting report, or he's not going to be buried on the scouting report. He's going to be towards the top of this thing. Does he hit a freshman wall? Do teams figure out how to not eliminate Javon Small, but do they take him out of the game just enough offensively to where it really disrupts the rhythm and efficiency of what WVU wants to do on that end? Does Amani Hansberry become a clear two, a clear three-level score? He hasn't necessarily shot the three ball probably as efficient or as effective as he or the team would like, but that's another question that has to be answered. Is Eduardo Andre, the way that he's played these last two games, he deserves to stay in the starting lineup. And I know, again, Imani Hansberry has unreal potential. But the way Eduardo has played these last two games, he has earned the right, in my opinion, to stay in the starting five. So we'll see how that transpires. Is that somebody that can be a key part moving forward? Can he continue this level of play? If that's the case, then West Virginia's in a whole lot better spot than they thought they were, at least in the front court. So there's a lot of things that I think go into this. Obviously, the health of the other guys that maybe aren't injured right now. Does Javon Small stay healthy? Does Jonathan Powell stay healthy? Does Andre stay healthy? Does KJ Tenner stay healthy? Those are big, big factors to this because this is not a deep team as it is. And when you've already lost Tucker DeVries, you're already without Jaden Stone, you really can't afford another blow. So if they're able to kind of stay away from the injury bug and they are able to get Tucker DeVries back, I 100% believe this team can contend for a Big 12 title and contend to get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and perhaps more. Again, that's dependent on matchups. I don't want to get too deep into the NCAA tournament thing because you can't say that, hey, this team's probably a Sweet 16 team and that's probably their max. If they get a favorable bracket, that you may say, well, hey, they're Elite Eight or Final Four, capable. Or if they get a really tough matchup in the first round or second round, you're thinking, I don't even know if they get to the Sweet 16 or if they can even get to the second round. So that kind of depends on the matchups, the region that you're in, where you're playing. There's just a lot of variables that go into that. But I really think, if we're just looking at this in terms of the Big 12, I think there's probably four other teams that are legitimate contenders, and I think one that you could consider a wild card outside of West Virginia, that is. So I would say Houston, without a doubt, is going to be there. Their defense is so good. That's going to be their bread and butter. They're going to win games just solely based on their defense. If their offense shows up, even better for them. Iowa State, in my opinion, they're the best team in the league, and it's not even close. I think there's a significant difference right now, and this could change, between Iowa State and whoever you want to put there in the second spot and everybody else. I think it's Iowa State, maybe a little cluster of teams, two or three teams, and then your middle of the pack, which is probably about five or six teams, and then the bottom. Iowa State, to me, is head and shoulders the clear cut favorite to win the league. Um, then I would go to Kansas. Yes, West Virginia won out there, but they turned around and spanked UCF pretty handily. Almost put up 100 points on them. So I think Kansas will get things figured out. They're going to be okay. They're going to be in the mix. And then I kind of get to, West Virginia's going to be in the mix. And then Arizona. I think Arizona, regardless of what happens tonight, I think Arizona is going to be a team that's going to be in contention at least in that top 4, top 5. They're too talented not to be. So those are the teams that I think are going to be at the top fighting for a spot, or for that top spot in the Big 12 regular season. And I think really the only other team that I'm kind of going back and forth on is Baylor. I mean, they have the talent, the pieces are there for them to be in the mix. But what they did at Iowa State, I don't know how much you can put much stock into that, because I mean Iowa State, like I said a minute ago, I believe is one of the top teams in the country. They are, in my opinion, the top team in the Big 12, head and shoulders above everybody else. So I don't know that losing by 20 some points to Iowa State at Hilton is much of a big deal. I think there's still a lot that needs to be figured out there. They've lost a handful of games. They got beat pretty bad, beat like a drum really against Gonzaga early on in the year. So if they get things figured out, they'll be in the play too. But I really think it's between just a handful of teams. And West Virginia, if they win tonight and they're 3-0 and they go to Colorado and you win in Boulder, you're 4-0. Still a lot of basketball left. There's still 16 games even after Sunday. But they're going to be positioning themselves to firmly be in the mix, and Lord knows what could happen. With the Houston and Iowa State split, you get Iowa State at home, Houston on the road. But if you can somehow split those two games, I mean, you got to love where you're at. Again, even after tonight, if they lose to Arizona, you're still in an okay spot. You've already beat them once. It kind of washes itself out, not in Big 12 terms, but in terms of the NCAA tournament resume. So I think they are a legitimate contender right now. If they get Tucker DeVries back, look out, because you don't have to face Kansas again. If he comes back before those two tough games against Houston and Iowa State, and you're able to do some damage in those two games, then West Virginia's going to be soaring up the rankings. They're going to be soaring up and bracketology projections and what have you. So this is an interesting situation, but I will say this. Darian DeVries has done a phenomenal job with this team through 13 games. Shorthanded, even more shorthanded with the injuries, and yet has this team 3-0 against top 25 opponents and got West Virginia's first ever win at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, just an incredible job. What this man can do with a team that he doesn't have to assemble over the summer in a span of a couple of months. I mean, the sky is the limit. I really think that he could do some really special things here at West Virginia, because this is what he can do with essentially a 7-man rotation, and he's got one of his best players out. What's he going to be able to do when he has a full kind of two deep, if you will, and has a rotation of 10, 11 guys, and maybe guys with more experience than what he's got right now, or higher level players? Something special is brewing in Morgantown, folks. It is. So that's going to do it for me here today on Between the Ears. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a like, and then give us a follow on our X account at SI_WVU. Make sure you tune in tonight. We will have the post-game show recapping the action between the Mountaineers and the Wildcats here on the Mountaineer post-game show right here on this very channel. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. You get that notification when the episode drops. It'll be shortly after the game ends. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you back here later tonight on the post-game show.